Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of La Rouge Rugby Podcast, where we focus on real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Bissett. Derek, we've had the second round of MLR this season. We've also had the third round of the Six Nations. So a lot of rugby going on. I mean, it's good to be back into the full swing of things, isn't it?
Yeah, there was even like Premiership and other games this weekend too, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think so. In the United Rugby Championship, I think it
Oh,
was
United Rugby Championship, yeah. There's a
yeah,
lot.
there's the exclusively South African games
There's
going on there. So
yeah, exclusively South African games. Okay, so there was that then, and then there was also the LA Sevens as well, right? So
yeah,
there's
so
I mean, if you want to watch rugby, and I think like Super League started up if you want a little bit of a different flavor of rugby as well, and then I think the NRL gets going this weekend if you're in the league too. So
yeah, and
I
Super
mean,
Rugby down in
Super Rugby
Sanzar
down.
Stadium
Yes,
doing
that's
it.
that all started. It honestly it might be the best time of the year right now for rugby viewing, especially club rugby viewing. Well, I guess
Especially in North American viewing as
yeah,
well. Because
it might be the
yeah,
best time of the year. Like you
yeah,
can literally like once Super Rugby starts, it becomes that if I wake up at 3 a.m., I can do nothing but watch rugby until midnight. Like
yeah,
you can just burn a hole in the couch. It's a blizzard outside. You don't want to go out anyways.
nope,
Just order some food, have some beers
yeah,
all day,
good
like all day
times.
rugby. You can start at 3 a.m. It's the best time
Yeah.
of the year. What better way to
Yeah.
spend the weekend?
Well, there may be a few better ways considering on some of the results. I think it's time we got into the Arrows game, unfortunately. So, the Arrows became the first team to go to Mount Vernon Memorial Stadium, the new home of the Rugby New York Ironworkers. And yeah, well, first of all, it didn't really go well. The final score, New York 39, Toronto 3.
That was some
Uh,
delightfully accurate analysis there, Stu.
Yeah, the only score was a penalty from Kobe Faust. But yeah, it was. I think the first thing to point out was that Sam Malcolm was on the injured list. In fact, the injured list is already pretty long
Oh
for
my
the
goodness.
second round of the season. So Nick Benn, Will Grant, Sam Malcolm, Shane O'Leary, Noel Reid, Tyler Rowland, and Corey Thomas all unavailable for this game for injury-related reasons. I think Shane O'Leary was also a very late call as well. So as a result, we had the unlikely situation of having Mitch Richardson at 10, Kieran Breen at 15, and then on the bench, the only backs that were available were Cole Brown and Avery Oiterman. So, yeah, that was the lineup. We'll get onto that in a minute. Speaking of injury list, there was a nasty knock between Kieran Breen and Cole Davis. Davis was removed from the field due to injury. We now have a press release from the Toronto Arrows saying that Toronto Arrows wing Cole Davis was transported to a local hospital for further evaluation following his injury during the first half of the game against New York. The Arrows are happy to report that after thorough assessment, Cole has been discharged from the hospital and is back with his teammates. Cole will travel back to Toronto with the team and will rest at home under the care and supervision of club medical staff. The club would like to thank the medical staff on site at Memorial Field and at the local hospital for their exceptional care. And, when you see a big hit like that and you see like stretcher comes on, the score doesn't really matter at that point. All you want to know is that
No.
guys are safe, guys are okay, they're being treated well. Cole Davis has even taken to Twitter to thank people for sending him warm wishes. Even Rugby New York has reached out and said, thinking of you as you recover, which is always great to hear and shows the camaraderie within rugby. We're rivals, not enemies, which is always great. And yeah, it's a real benefit to see it. But yeah, the injury list prior to the game was bad.
Yeah.
The injury list after the game looking pretty worse. And suffice to say, maybe it's for the best that the Arrows are going into a bye week
Yeah,
this week.
that's exactly what I was gonna say too. It's I'm not a big fan of the early bye weeks and stuff, especially when we're in a league now where the teams like we have an even number of teams, so it's not like last year where somebody had to miss each week.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of tend to maybe think we should maybe wait a little bit longer before start handing out bye weeks. Like, Old Glory in Chicago had a bye week this week. It's week 2.
Yeah.
That being said, completely agree with you. It's like, seems like a blessing in disguise because, as you kind of mentioned, right, Oideman and Brown were the only backs on the bench. They went with a 6-2 split on the bench, and really, if you look at the roster,
Yeah.
and compare and contrast to the injured list, they were really the only two options to put on the bench, right? Like, there's not like every back that was available was basically in this game. Right, which obviously kind of affects other lineup areas of the lineup too, depending on international slots and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably a blessing in disguise to get the bye week, not just because of the injury list though, but because we'll get into the actual game. It's the performance in the game itself, but might be nice to get a little week off and regroup and rethink attack plans and defense strategies and regroup, get a little breather, and then try to bounce back after a tough start. There was a moment in that game though where the most important thing was just hopefully Cole Davis is okay. So
yeah.
But shall we get into the rest of the I hope everybody else is okay too, by the way. Like, hopefully, like, nobody wants to see this, and obviously it's a very, we all know what the Arrows went through last year, and it's obviously a very difficult start. So
yeah, so I think the first thing to keep in mind when you're talking about like the team before the game even began is it seems as though so I'd been informed that Sam Malcolm was injured and wouldn't be in the game anyway before the team list was announced. But the team list was also announced very last minute. I think it was like Saturday evening, so it's not even you're
publicly
already
announced last minute.
Yeah, so you're already past the 24 hours, which is usually like the minimum window of announcing your team. So it seems to me as though Shane O'Leary was supposed to be in the starting lineup, but something must have happened, like, must have tweaked something in the captain's run or, just a culmination of things to come through. So I think that's why we had Richardson and Breen starting with only 2 backs available. Like, I know that we have the high performance athletes and we have Brennan Black, who's listed as a fullback and a winger. But if it's done within 24 hours before kickoff, it's not really possible to get him to come down as soon as possible. I think it's just, out of the circumstances. And yeah, I think it was just, we don't know the full details, unfortunately, at this point, but it does seem as though it was a last minute thing to come through.
You know what, though? Now that you're saying that, because if O'Leary started, that probably means Richardson would have been in as a center, which means Goodall might have been on the bench. I wonder if that's why Goodall wasn't wearing a number.
Oh, Goodall's too Goodall for numbers.
Yeah, Goodall. Yeah, exactly. It's the second game in a row he hasn't worn a number, but I don't know. I wonder if that's like because maybe they didn't have a what did he play, 12? Maybe they didn't have a 12 jersey that fit him because he's a bit bigger than Mitch Richardson, so maybe
well, maybe that's also why they need the bye week, just to get extra numbers in for Goodall for his jersey.
Yeah, we got to get Goodall's got to fly the Taylor in from from overseas. So
yeah. But this is something that we were talking about last week of saying like, we'll have O'Leary start at 10 and Malcolm at 15.
Yeah.
But this is something that needs to be highlighted. This may also go into explaining why the score was as one-sided as it is. And that in the modern rugby game is that if there aren't any kickers, there's no attack. So the minimum number of kickers that should be in the starting 15 are 3. So you have the scrum half, the fly half, and the fullback. And, maybe a centre can be like a kicker as well. For example, Owen Farrell for England occasionally starts at 12, and he's a kicking option as well. So, the more kickers available, the more attacking options you have. So in the ideal, perfect starting lineup for the Arrows, everyone's healthy, everyone's good to go 100%. You'd probably have Brody at 9 as scrum half, O'Leary as fly half, Malcolm as fullback.
Yeah.
But two of those guys are injured. And so therefore the only regular kicker you have is Brody. Now, again, Richardson, Breen, Faust, they were there, but they just so Richardson, while he has played at 10 before, hasn't been at the pro level. I think we had like Will Kelly saying that Will Kelly and Sean Windsor both on Twitter saying like, he does have kicking capabilities. And Jamie McKenzie as well. Yeah, so a lot of guys saying, Richardson can kick, and he has been a fly half back in like 2019, I believe they said.
Yeah.
So, but even then, that's 3 seasons of Richardson playing as like a center or a winger, not responsible for the kicking duties. And again, we're not the coaches. We don't know what he does under the coach's watch, if he does do kicks or not. But as was shown in the game, he just hasn't had as much time as definitely Brody and certainly Malcolm of kicking and professional conditions. Faust, he stepped up to do the kicks goal. He's done that for like the Canada under-20s as well. So that's, that was good, but there just wasn't, like I say, the level of being a regular kicker at pro level. Maybe it's something that, he can be asking the coaches during not off season, during the bye week and during the regular season, just to have that other skill in his arsenal. But you have the Arrows going from attack plan of having 3 kickers available minimum to 1. Now let's contrast that with New York. So New York had Buckley at scrum half. They had Sam Windsor at fly half and Jack Hyton at fullback. Well, we all know how good Sam Windsor is. In this game, he became the first point scorer in MLR history to pass 500 points. So clearly he's very versatile with the boot. Likewise, Jack Hyton has moved from fly half to fullback and vice versa, depending on who's available or not. So that's another kicking option. And then obviously you have Buckley, who is like Brody, doing like box kicks, finding space to go. So you have a team with essentially minimal attacking options, 1 or 2, against a team with 3 seasoned guys in the position. Those guys are going to kick the ball over the defensive line, find that space, get that attack sorted, and get the tries. And that is what happened. So, I mean, it is disappointing. To be honest, as soon as that team list came up, I knew that it was going to be a very tough game for the Arrows. And yeah, by all means, credit to Richardson, credit to Breen, Faust. They're the guys that put their hands up. They said, we're going to do this. They understood they're not the first choice for kickers. But, credit where it's due. They knew the situation they were under. They stepped up. And, I got to respect that. That's fantastic of them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, tough circumstances, like you just kind of said, right? So Richardson's first pro game at fly half, and his opposite number is, the all-time leading scorer in Major League Rugby, right? It's and not only that too, it's like you're on a back line with a brand new center combination that hasn't played a game as Arrows together. And then you have a fullback in his second game in Major League Rugby, and you got I guess one winger and your scrum half you probably played with last year, and then the other wingers you did was acquired this off season. So again, like what we were talking about last week, it's a new team, right? And there's a lot that has to still be figured out, and part of that is still going to be like figuring out where guys fit in best, especially those guys that can play multiple positions. To your point with some of the kicking, I think Richardson might have maybe kicked too often in this game a little bit. Just because it seemed like there was a few times where it was just he got the ball as that first option, then tried to kick to space, and his kicks had a varying level of success. Some of them worked, some of them obviously didn't. But I think like when you have like you kind of said, right, like you don't really want to get into the kicking battle and stuff with New York. And even like Andrew Coe was running some really good counterattacks, and had some good kickbacks himself as well. right? But it's like you have these two like huge centers. And like one guy's like a rugby league guy, so like that's where that crash ball style is what they want, right? And maybe try to get the ball to them a little bit more. I think I would have liked to see it in this game because again, like I think right now where I'm kind of at right now on is my biggest concern with this team, maybe other than the injury situation. My biggest concern with this team right now is the fact that they've scored 13 total points and one try in the first two games of the season.
Yeah.
Right.
That is a big concern to have.
Yeah, exactly. It goes completely against Dan's prediction that they're going to be the highest scoring team in the league. But it's so that right now is my biggest concern because in as we kind of talked about last week against Atlanta, I don't think the attack looked dangerous at all until O'Leary came in.
Yeah.
Right? And then it started to pick up pace. They had multiple options. There was obviously a brilliant try that was scored. And here it was like, I think, part of it too, right? Credit to the Ironworkers defense. There was a lot of guys like Wengluski, Brakely, O'Connor. Like there was a lot of guys doing like wonders defensively for New York in this game. But if you kind of take the attack and it's like there's really no point in the game where they ever look threatening at all. Right. Because it was either they kicked the ball away or, turnovers would happen, handling errors, knock-ons, a couple breakdown steals from guys like O'Connor or counter rucks. And they never really looked dangerous, maybe outside of that one play at the end of the game where Faust nearly scored, but Tucker kind of got a piece of him at the end and he couldn't quite stick the grounding. But other than that, the attack just again for like the second week in a row, there didn't feel like there was too much there. And I think that right now is my biggest concern with the team. And then obviously like that concern is also there's a lot of backs on the injured list now as well too, right? So it's hopefully some of those guys get back. I don't know if we've really seen, I don't think through the first two games, I don't think we've seen like if you were to make like your ideal, there's no injuries, there's no outside circumstances preventing guys from playing, your ideal Arrows lineup. I don't think we've seen that yet.
No, that's the thing, because of those injuries, it's injured. I don't want to say the most important players, because that's obviously a player doesn't make a team, but it's the kickers, it's the guys who are supposed to be leading the attack. And when you have like the old fuddy-duddies of like, you got to keep the ball in hand and pass it out to the wings. Well, that's what the Arrows did. And like, look at the scoreboard. There clearly is more to it than just keeping the ball in hand. And, but I think we've talked about like the negative side of it, as in, the Arrows only scored 3 points. I think it's time we should look at the other positives of the game. So one name, there were positives. I got to say, Avery Oiterman coming into the game, obviously much earlier than intended, but he had some extraordinary moments.
Two trap savers.
An amazing run to get to avoid a try. I think, Dan was saying that, he's obviously beefed up since 2019, got a bit of muscle on him, but he doesn't seem to have sacrificed any speed or agility whatsoever. So that was great to see as well. It's good to, he's obviously been out of the sport for a few years now, but that doesn't mean he hasn't been like training and getting ready to come back. So that was great to see. Ramon Ayaza was a beast. Absolutely fantastic to see. The Arrows reported that he was, let me get it right, the most ball carries, the most carry meters, the most defenders beaten, the most offloads in the game. And he came on in the second half off the bench.
42nd minute. So we played pretty much the entire second half, but
38 minutes and he puts those numbers in. That's pretty damn good in my opinion. But yeah, it's like, so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a lot of negativity, obviously. It's like, we're 2 games now, only one
Yeah,
match point total. But consider this time last season, the Arrows were 0 for 2 and had no points whatsoever. And then they had their game against DC and were able to get their first win under the belt.
yeah,
But yeah, it's obviously a lot to say of New York. Like you said, Andrew Coe had a fantastic game.
yeah. He
The
was.
only Canadian that played exceptionally well in that game was unfortunately playing for the other team from the Arrows, which was, you know, swings and roundabouts, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, I think there are some good things to point at this team and be like this. There are flashes where we can see the Arrows of old, the Arrows who can, challenge to make the playoffs and reach it. Um, Obviously not the best start. Then again, could
no,
be worse. As I look at Nola Gold. Um,
yeah. That's an interesting team right now too.
yeah, we'll get onto them later. But yeah, I think it's easy to focus on the negatives. There are positives in this game, however few you may seem to find. And
Yeah,
I think the bye week will hopefully get guys rested, get them recovered. And by the time we get to week 4 at SeatGeek Stadium, we can hopefully see the team that has their backs healthy and therefore has a proper attacking structure ready to go to really give the Chicago Hounds a warm welcome to Major League Rugby.
yeah. That's. I think that's all we can hope for. I think. I love your assessment as two of the positives of the game being Avery Oideman and Ramon Ayarza. They were both incredible coming on in off the bench there. I think Ayarza probably earned a chance to start in a game as
Mm-hmm.
he's been um like Gene Simonton I think has been good, but like the impact that Ayarza made in the second half I think could warrant you know uh if the Arrows didn't have a bye week this week, I would say he should definitely play the next game. Who knows what's going to happen over the bye week and how training camp looks, and Pete Smith's going to be able to evaluate that. Or not training camp practice, but the one player that you didn't shout out that I think is worth a mention, or I guess two, as I said, Kobe Faust. I mean, I thought he played really well outside of obviously scoring the only 3 points of the game and nearly scoring a try. But also, I think Mason Flesh for the second game in a row is one of Toronto's better forwards. He had a lot, like another game having a lot of tackles. He's really involved at the breakdown. He's a very physical player, so that's nice to see, especially after Corey Thomas and Mike Shepard kept hyping him up a little bit when we were interviewing them before the season started. Mitch Eady, I thought was pretty good in his first MLR game too. He had some nice uh, ball carries as well. I mean, I'll echo what you said to close this out, and then we can maybe segue to the other Canadians. But yeah, Andrew Coe was incredible. Probably the best Canadian performance of the entire week across the league. He just does everything so well. He's like an unreal ball carrier, especially when counterattacking. Defensively, he's really good. He made some nice tackles. He's really, really getting good at timing that intercept run.
Yeah.
Right. That he nearly set up a try toward the end of the game that previously mentioned Oideman try saving tackle prevented. So there's some class Canadian wingers on display there, going both ways, showing off their defensive ability. But it's yeah, Cole was just outstanding, and it's a good start for the season for him. He's one of through the first 2 games, one of the league's leading one of the league leaders in meters carried already. So hopefully that's a trend that continues for the rest of the year.
Yeah. All right. That wasn't the only MLR game that happened this weekend. That all began on Friday night. And Seattle hosted ATL. And, it looks like the Seawolves definitely back. Great defensive efforts and, tries aplenty from both sides. A real close encounter. The final score, Seattle 28, Atlanta 22. Then we move into Utah, where they had their home opener with beautiful, picturesque mountains behind Zions Bank Stadium. And considering the last time Dallas visited Utah, it was a far worse affair than this. Final score: Utah 33, Dallas 25. Then, speaking of one Texan team, we're moving on to the other one. Houston hosted NOLA in their home opener of the season. And yeah, it looks like the SaberCats are ready to pounce, ready to continue how they finished off the end of last season as well. Absolutely wiping the floor with NOLA. The final score, Houston 35, NOLA 14. And we conclude the round in San Diego, back at Snapdragon Stadium, looking as beautiful as it was last week. And, it looks like the Legion of old, the Legion of 2020 is back in full swing. New England, unable to capitalize on try-scoring opportunities, point-scoring moments. San Diego just too quick, just too fast for them. Final score, San Diego 29, New England 12. So, Derek, were there any Canadian performances from those games that really stood out for you?
Yeah, there's a couple. I think right now I know, this was a terrible week for the official Rouge Rugby theory that the more Canadians you have in your lineup means you're going to win.
Yeah.
The top three teams in the league with the most Canadians, Toronto, New England, and Dallas, all lost. So that was a rough go. Dallas, though, I do find is a bit of a low key, like fascinating team to kind of watch as a Canadian fan, because obviously they have three Canadian front row players that are all incredibly young, and being on Dallas is probably really good for them because they might not be able to start games on other MLR teams.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see Murray and Kotze getting back-to-back starts, playing the vast majority of the game as well, right? Kotze had a great run in the build-up to a Juan Pablo Zeiss's try as well. So they look like they're handling themselves well at the scrum. They're doing well. They're doing well at the line out. Kotze's, hitting his throws. Murray, lifts are going well. Dallas's scrum's looking pretty good. So that's kind of a bit of a like low key kind of fun, exciting team to kind of keep an eye on from a Canadian point of view, I think. Just because it's even with Kyle Steeves coming off the bench, it's three young Canadians kind of getting a shot to lead the charge for one of their MLR teams. Dallas, obviously, 0-2, so they're 0-18 in their franchise now. This game, they looked a lot better, certainly a lot better than last week. I think beyond their Canadians too, Sam Gola, the number one pick in the draft last year, is looking really good for them, man. That guy's making a ton of tackles. And he seems to be playing very well. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you're the number one overall pick, which means you go to the worst team in the league, right? So that's how that kind of works, right? So he's looking pretty good on Dallas. And then there was obviously from this game, I know Utah won, and I'm not talking about Utah at all, but Naposki had the best try of the game too. That step, can't remember which defender that was, but just spin cycled them. That was unreal. Yeah, Dallas. I mean, I hope they get a win soon. I do.
Well, that was fun. My outlandish theory of this. Opening 4 rounds is that they get it. But even if they don't, I want them to get a win sooner rather than later, because they definitely are knocking at the door. They're definitely more of a competitive threat compared to last year, which I know was inundated with visa issues and a massive injury that came out of nowhere for a number of teammates. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. So my game of the week may be biased because of the location, but San Diego versus New England. You have Sears Duru and Jason Higgins coming on around about like the hour mark, by which point the game's already run. It's already 22-7. at this point.
Yeah.
But keeping the Pistons going, keeping the possession, and stepping into like New England territory. And it was eventually Nate Olsberger getting the final try deep into the red to get San Diego the bonus point. But then again, you also had New England, fine spell Canadians, Foster DeWitt coming on for around about the 50. No, there seemed to be like the front row changes all happened at the 50-minute mark, with Foster DeWitt coming on, Andrew Quattrin coming on, Cole Keith coming off, which was, just let them have like a full Canadian front row for like one scrum and see how well it dominates, and then the entire league will be doing it.
Yeah, maybe they'll do it when they play Dallas. We'll get the 6 Canadian front rowers head to head.
Oh, that would be nice to watch. Ben Lesage getting his first start in MLR 2023. Not first start, his first time on the pitch, replacing Spencer Jones again at the 50-minute mark. Seems a lot of New England changes around 50 minutes.
They were losing.
Yeah. I mean, I get they were losing, but this would have been just after Henderson's try. So okay, I can understand it, but so I think it was like a total of 6 players got replaced in the 50-minute mark. Blinkeneck. But yeah, Josh Larson, Connor Keys, they did the full 80. So whilst they are on the right track of becoming Canada South, they just need a bit more cohesion, time together. Again, that Canadian front row, once it's in place, demolishes every other team except the Arrows in the league. So I mean it's just science. You need to do it to fully understand it. So until you prove me wrong, I'm correct. That's how it works. But special mention as well to Andrew Quattrin, who the league acknowledged has received his 50th cap. So 48 of them came with the Arrows, the final 2 coming with New England, and by coming onto the pitch as substitution, becomes one of the latest in the long line, and I believe the second Canadian to
reach. It's Paul Cellini.
Yeah, Paul Cellini
his 50th in the last game of the season last year. Yeah. I think Mike Shepard, I believe, is 2 games away. 2 games away from hitting his 50 as well.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to be the next Canadian that does it.
Yeah. Well, that'd be good to see. But obviously, it's that when the guys finally come to Toronto, whether it's Arrows players or former Arrows players, then hopefully they can be acknowledged for their number of caps that they received under the banner of the Toronto Arrows. And I'm sure all the fans will be willing to cheer that on. Speaking of MLR, there seems to be a change at the top. Press release that came out on February 24th is that the league commissioner, George Killebrew, was stepped down as commissioner, having served the role since 2019, and is to be replaced by Nick Benson, formerly of the Utah Warriors backroom staff, who has, instead of becoming the commissioner, has become CEO. So in the press release, they mentioned that under Killebrew's leadership, MLR has grown with the addition of Chicago and, as was announced, the Miami Sharks for 2024. He's also been instrumental in leading the campaign to bring the 2031 Men's World Cup and the 2033 Women's World Cup to the United States. There's also been the Rugby Network has been launched under his commissionership. Is that a word, or did I just make that up?
You could probably just say leadership.
Yeah, under his leadership.
That's a word, commissionership. Yeah. I'm not sure. But...
and it also says that Killebrew leaves the league in an excellent position for continued growth. In-stadium attendance has doubled in recent years, with 75,000 new fans enjoying the action in person in 2022. The Rugby Network viewership has grown 144% year over year. League-wide sponsorship have increased by seven figures, and the Fox viewership spiked 62% in 2022. So, yeah, it's obviously when you leave a position, you want to leave the sport in a better place than you found it, and especially with the global pandemic shutting everything down, it would be very easy to rest on your laurels, play it safe. But I think the Rugby Network is probably the best addition
Yeah.
that North American rugby could have ever had. Obviously there's been the issues with Austin and LA and their departures from the league, but it looks as though that the sport is still growing in certain cities. There's always the chance that LA and Austin can return under different banners. And yeah, I gotta thank George Killebrew for everything he's done for the league. Wish him all the best in his next steps, and say that Nick Benson definitely has some big shoes to fill. But I'm looking forward to see what he does going forward as the new CEO of MLR.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a big change. Coming just kind of as the season begins here. It's great that Benson being a guy that used to work within the Utah Warriors organization. So, that's obviously really. I think that's really key to me. Is get somebody that understands the league or understands how the teams in the league are going to operate. To have them come in and build off of the work that George Killebrew began. I agree with you. I think the Rugby Network being a thing that I guess was created under Killebrew, or how is easily the best thing that he did. But I do wonder, based on timing, because obviously the last really major news story in this league in the offseason was obviously the Gill team's departure, and prior to that the disqualification, and all the craziness and madness that ensued based on that, right? So a bit of a wild I guess if you're thinking about the last thing Killebrew did, I guess it's going to be a little bit related to that, and maybe a couple sponsorship deals that got inked before the season starts. But overall, I thought it was pretty solid. He did some funny things. He had I do fondly remember that video of him and Marty Turco drinking a bunch of team sponsored beers together. So that should be part of the George Killebrew highlight reel legacy of MLR when he gets the I guess commissioners aren't going to get video tributes like former players do, but whatever.
Yeah, there'll be articles written about him, and I'm sure
Yeah.
there'll be lots of positive things to say about him. So again, thank you, George, and wishing you all the best going forward. Now we're going to stay in North America, but we're moving to a different form of rugby. We're going to the Sevens because it is the first of the World Seven Series double headers coming up. And we start off in Los Angeles, in a city known for its warm weather and dry, beautiful sunshine. There's a lot of rain and thunderstorms going on.
Nice.
So that was fun. As we all know, Canada is still plugging away, and it seems like every pool that Canada gets is always a tough pool, and I think that says more about the Canada team or the other Sevens teams. I'm not really entirely sure, but opening game was against the Blitzboks. Okay, it's definitely the other teams. They're just really good. Opening with a 12-0 loss to South Africa, and that was followed by another 0 loss, this time 22-0 to Ireland, but concluded with a 26-10 win over Uruguay, which put them in the quarterfinals for 9th place. So in the knockout stages, they started off with a 12-5 win over Kenya before falling 17-12 in a loss to Spain. Now, there isn't really a playoff match for 11th place, but considering that Uruguay got absolutely demolished, I'm saying that Canada finished 11th.
Yeah.
So that currently puts them 14th in the standings. Now, as we said a while back, the standings in place have 12th, 13th, and 14th in a playoff pool with the winner of the World Sevens Challenger Series. So they're currently a safe place from 15th and definite elimination, which is currently held by Japan. But they are only 10 points from safety. With the Canada Sevens coming up, it's not the only Sevens tournament before the finals in France, I believe. France or London. It's one of the two. I apologize. I can't remember at the moment.
Just say Europe.
Yeah. Before the final stage in Europe, so there's another 7 series in Hong Kong. I believe there's another one in Singapore, and then 2 final ones in Europe. But obviously now is the ideal time to start getting a few more wins, especially in the pool stage, to push them into the quarterfinals for the cup final, and therefore, guarantee them more points. But it's a tough task, obviously, with the pools being drawn and who they'll have to face. But yeah, obviously, just need to be getting a few more wins early on. Will be helping them out further down the line.
Good chance to do that too. Big, obviously the home tournament coming up this weekend, right? So
yeah,
Vancouver Sevens, like no
well,
better.
Well, you say that. Did you see how the USA did? That talk about fall from grace. I think they finished 14th.
I don't care about them. I don't.
Yeah, but it was their home tournament. That's
I know that sucks.
That's what I mean.
You never want to. I know. All jokes aside, man. You do it is the USA Sevens team has been one of the better teams on the tour for a while. So that's tough to see the performance that they had in their own tournament. But it's hopefully Vancouver will be rocking next week and can maybe power the boys through to a solid finish. Hopefully a series win. We haven't had a series dub stock dub in a while, so
that'd be nice. Yeah. Well, while we're waiting on that, we are going to have our predictions for round 3 of MLR. Now, there's no Arrows game coming up, but they are on a bye along with New England. But we do have 5 games coming up. The first of which is Dallas versus Seattle. Derek, who have you got?
Well, all right. I'm starting to like your prediction more and more, and I just spent a few minutes talking about some things I like about Dallas. The Arrows are on a bye week, so if Dallas win, I do have a Jackals hat, and if Dallas wins, I fully plan on wearing it on the episode next week. But they have to win.
All right.
It's a comfy hat though, so I'm going to cheer for that to happen. So, let's go Dallas first up.
Okay, I will go for Seattle.
Probably the smart decision. Probably
it possibly is, but this will be their first game away from home this season, so having to make the trek down.
Maybe the football lines will throw some guys off.
Yeah, maybe they'll be. But I'm in the try line. No, that's a yard line, completely different.
It threw off. Who was it? Grassman from Houston. The first game, grounded the ball like a few meters shy. Saw the wrong line.
Yeah,
it's trippy.
It is. Next up, we have Atlanta versus NOLA, so an all-Eastern affair. I am going to go with... I know I went with the away team, but I'm going to be going with the home team for this one. I will be going with Atlanta.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take NOLA in this one because I think NOLA has to win this game. NOLA was a team that a lot of people, including us, I think were pegging to be like around the playoffs, or in the playoffs. And they started, everyone's talking about how much improved they are, and they started 0-2. They played really good teams in New England and Houston, 2 teams that, again, that are maybe positioned to be at the top of their conference.
Yeah.
Predictions. So Atlanta's had a bit of a NOLA's had a bit of a tough schedule to start. But they need a win. I don't think if they go 0-3, I'm not sure what the confidence level of that squad is going to be going forward. So I think they need the win. So I'll take them to actually come away with the win as well.
Okay. And for the third game, we are going to SeatGeek Stadium for the first time in MLR history as Chicago will be hosting the Utah Warriors. Who have you got for that one, Derek?
Interesting. I think coming off a bye week, Chicago didn't look very good against DC though. But first game at home, I'll give them the cool. It's their first game at home bump. So I'll go with Chicago this week.
Yeah, I don't know what the weather will be like in Chicago on Saturday, but
Probably windy.
probably windy. Yeah, windy city, but probably a bit of chill. But a place that had chill last round was Salt Lake City and Zions Bank Stadium. They even had volunteers shoveling the snow off the pitch prior to the game. So I don't know. I think Utah have a bit of experience with this cold weather. So, I'll give the cap to that. I'll say Utah.
Nice.
Big battle between New York and DC. DC coming off their bye, New York with a bit of momentum with that win over the Arrows. Who have you got, Derek?
Man, I think New York I think New York looked really good against Toronto this past week. DC maybe it looked like the best team in week 1 though, so it's very interesting. I think though I'm going to stick with New York for this one.
All right. Well, yeah, that's fair enough. I think, yeah, again, I agree with you. I don't think we should be having buys in like the second week of the tournament, especially when you have an even number of teams. But DC were incredibly impressive, great flowing rugby. And you know what? Just because we've picked other teams so far this game, I'm gonna go with DC. And we come to our final game, and it is all in the West as Houston will host San Diego. So, two of the stronger teams, both on 2-0. Someone's going to be not getting one in the win column. So, Houston to host. And I am going to say that the team that is probably got a bit of an edge has been just more dominant, maybe played more high-level teams. I'd say is San Diego. So I think the momentum should be with them. Even though it's an away game, I will be going with the Legion and picking San Diego.
Ooh, yeah. San Diego has looked good. Their defense looked good. Their attack looks really good. I think Nanu has maybe looked the best that he's looked all year, or like in his, not all year, but in his MLR career. But I think Houston has, Houston being at home, they're usually very good at home. I think a lot of their new acquisitions have been shining early this year. Drew Wild, their new fullback, looks really good. Danny Barrett seems to be at the top of his game, so I think I'm gonna go with Houston.
All right.
And I was gonna say one of us is gonna have a good week, one of us is gonna have a bad week, man. That's
we'll see how it goes. We may get a 2-3 split. Who knows? Who knows? But it's going to be a great weekend of rugby, and I can't wait to watch it. And if you would like to watch any of the MLR games, because the Arrows aren't playing this week, that means there won't be any games on TSN. So all the games will be available on the Rugby Network. And as we mentioned, the World 7 Series will be returning to Vancouver for the Canada leg, and you can find that on CBC and CBC Gem. And if you want to catch any of the rugby that's going on in Europe, the Six Nations is off this weekend, but Premiership and URC action will continue on Sportsnet. So again, World 7 Series on CBC, the Premiership and URC on Sportsnet, and the MLR games will be on the Rugby Network. So if you have enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more episodes as well as written pieces on our brand new website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, Anchor FM, and Apple Podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel at The Rouge Rugby, with episodes of the podcast as well as extra interviews with players and coaches. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with all of our videos. We are also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Again, all at The Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can the fine people find you on social media?
At Brissette the Jet on pretty much all social media networks.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me once more. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby Podcast, where we focus on real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.